So how did
what
you
this is
come into
happening.
this?
I had businesses in the past. I tried to save the world through a nonprofit with Pay It Forward
I
Foundation,
saw
the
that.
famous book in the movie. And then I spent 10 years with my teacher, and he stripped me of all my bias and conditioning. He had me read every book, not to feed my head full of bullshit and knowledge, but to make me understand that everything everyone's fighting over is coming from the same source. So how do you choose a side? And what's the one thing we've never done since the beginning of humanity? To your point, when you said if you're neutral and you don't pick a side, then you don't have a group with you. It's the only thing we haven't done in humanity. And look at humanity; it's more fucked up than
Hmm.
ever.
Hmm.
We're more divided and conflicted than ever. So let's keep doing the same shit. Are we that ignorant?
Yeah.
Apparently so.
Welcome, Third Rock listeners, to the Branding Laboratory. I'm your host, Devo, Chief Experience Officer for the Brand Storyteller and the Fusion Creative Brands. And each week, I have the privilege of speaking with extraordinary leaders and entrepreneurs who are reshaping the way industries work. These conversations go way beyond the surface to explore the core philosophies, the lessons, and the challenges that define the brands that we admire today. And one of the greatest rewards of this podcast is the opportunity to share the insights of some of the brightest minds in business, people who are passionate about pushing boundaries and redefining what's possible. And as I always say, the stories we tell are the brands we build. And this show is a testament to the power of that concept. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Brand Laboratory, the podcast where we explore what it really means to build a brand, a business, and a life that actually feels like you. And today's episode is a little bit different than normal. This is not about tactics or templates or messaging. It's really about the concept of consciousness, which I guess really kind of goes back to everything else we just said, but not consciousness in the spiritual woo-woo kind of way, but more in a deeply human, practical, why the hell does this matter to my business, or why the hell does this matter to me kind of way. And my guest is Charley Johnson. He is the founder, thinker, teacher, master, and the man pioneering a new role inside organizations, and he calls it the Chief Consciousness Officer. And it's not about marketing hacks or 10xing your sales funnel. It's really about the internal systems that shape our external results. Let's reframe that one more time or restate that. It's about the internal systems, who we are inside, that shape the external results, our perceptions, our perspectives, how we lead, how we build, how we connect, and how we evolve as people and as companies. And I was really excited to bring him on the show when I first read about him and saw him, because that's what I do with my coaching business. Is before we go into business strategy or anything else, we talk about who you are as a human. How do you view the world? How do you show up in the world? How do you want to show up in the world? What are those gaps in between, and how do we close them? And that's what he's doing as a chief consciousness officer for organizations. So if you've ever felt like you're doing all the right things, but something's still off, if you're starting to question what leadership even means in this age of disruption and distraction and all the chaos that's going on, or if you're just simply craving a more grounded, more awake, notice I didn't say woke, a more awake, more soul aligned way to run your business and live your life, then this episode might be for you. So let's get into it. My guest today is Charley Johnson, and he's got a really interesting business disposition. He is awakening consciousness in the corporate world, or really business in general, which is sort of a topic in this day and age that I think some people would hear and frown at. You know, this whole idea of everybody. And let me back up for a second. First of all, welcome to the show.
Thanks, man.
I sort of see a dichotomy building right now in this whole
Uh huh.
idea of spirituality and consciousness and what a lot of people refer to as just woo woo stuff. And
Uh huh.
there's the genuine, and I hate the word woke because it's gotten such a bad rap, but there's the genuine group of people who are waking up to the bullshit of the world and
Hmm.
realizing that there is something bigger and more meaningful that A, they're supposed to do, B, they're supposed to be part of, and C, supposed to build collectively, community,
Hmm.
etc. And then there's the other people who are just doing it for the likes. And I don't, you do you. I'm not making a judgment. I'm just, these are my observations. And one group is giving the other group a bad rap. That's sort of my outside, high level, 30,000 altitude
Okay.
observation of it. And so when anytime anybody sort of hears these words, they're like, oh, great, now what? What
Yep.
acronyms am I going to have to adopt for this sort of thing? All right.
Mhm.
So before I dive into some of the questions I really want to talk about is maybe just introduce what consciousness means to you and what it means. It's not spiritual fluff. Like
No, no,
what
no,
is
no.
Charlie? Yeah, what is
Okay,
Charlie
so
Johnson's take on all this?
the position we're pioneering is called the Chief Consciousness Officer. And just like you said, the reason we're doing 60 podcasts in the last 6 weeks is because people are waking up to wanting to know what that is. And the first thing I will tell you immediately, remove spirituality from your vocabulary. This
Thank
is
you.
not spiritual. This is tactical.
Mm,
Because I spent 10 years with an individual people would leave their entire world for.
mm.
Someone who can see all your thoughts, your inside your body, can levitate, can do everything. I understand the spiritual world very clearly. And I understand it's just the heads and the tails of the religion. I understand that most people on the spiritual path that think it's better, it's just different.
Mm.
So the biggest thing for me is going through that path, understanding it so well. So I wanted to bridge that gap and to remove the bullshit of thinking that consciousness is spiritual. Since consciousness is everything physical and non-physical. Everything, everyone is looking at you and I are right now are swimming in the old metaphor, the wise fish swimming through the ocean, swims by two young fish and says, "Hey boys, how's the water?" The two fish look at each other and say, "What's water?" That's consciousness.
Mm.
So to think that consciousness has anything to do with spirituality is the conditioning and the bias of the individuals on this planet that think that it's about meditation, it's about a guru, it's about this, it has nothing to do with that. So that's why we're the narrative of this, speaking about this clearly, bringing this into business, letting them know that the CEO, the customer service, the middle management, the manufacturing, the operations, everyone at every level of the company is swimming in consciousness. It's what they have access to. It's where the knowledge they seek is. So that's why this is completely different. That's why this position is so crucial.
Okay, let's not use the word consciousness for a second. If you couldn't use the word consciousness and it's not spirituality, what is it?
Awareness, knowledge.
It's sort of
NASA did a
going. Sorry, go ahead.
NASA did a study where they followed 2,000 kids. 98% of them were considered genius at the ages of 4. By the time those kids were adults, it was less than 2%.
Mm,
So knowledge is power. But the way we built our system, our education, our
mm.
teachers, the people who love us, the bias, everything, we are stripped of 98% of the knowledge and the genius that we were born with. And we
The
wonder why
ability
the
for critical thinking.
correct. We wonder why the world is so divided, conflicted between Catholics and atheists and Republicans and Democrats and executives and employees. That
Mm.
gap is widening.
So I like that you call it self-awareness because, and let's break that down for a minute. My interpretation of self-awareness is sort of an understanding that there is something deeper and more meaningful than just yourself. And that in the process of understanding that, you open yourself up to a plethora of opportunities, experiences, all sorts of different things that you would have never had the opportunity to have. You're open to feedback, you're receptive to growth. You're sort of looking for opportunities to improve yourself and in the process improve the collective. Is that a good interpretation of having
That
consciousness?
okay, so that's a great interpretation, but let's simplify it. All self-awareness is going from here, this very limited perception that most people have,
Mm-hmm.
and just expanding it.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever the hell that means. It
Mm-hmm.
could mean being a better customer service agent. It could mean paying your mortgage better. It could be a middle manager treating their employees better. It could be an executive that wants to have a better understanding of strategy. It could be a CMO who needs new marketing ideas. Just expanding your awareness. We could go into what you just talked about, the self-development type of talk. We could go into the spiritual talk, but we're just trying to keep this as simple as possible and realize that the conscious leadership, that everything that's been going on the last 20 years, how's it look?
Mm-hmm.
How's the world?
Mm-hmm.
It's not working. It's not working because we're spending so much time with just the executives. It's not trickling down to the 98.5% of the employees. It's not trickling down to the people that they manage. What actually is happening is the executives have taken that conscious leadership and this understanding of what you and I are talking about, not really understood it, and almost in a sense turned around and used it as a tool or a manipulation to the employees. And with the clarity that's coming on this planet, the employees' bullshit meters through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why that gap is widening.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that there has been a pernicious, concerted effort to dumb people down for a very long time?
If that's the case, they're doing the best they can. They're merely a reflection of society,
Who's doing the best they can?
the government or whoever you think is dumbing us down.
Well, I don't
Okay,
think I think government is just puppets personally, but that's a different
I,
conversation.
I completely agree. I completely agree.
I don't think governments have any control over anything whatsoever. There's something much bigger that's kind of calling the shots, the wizard behind the curtain, if you will.
Yeah, and that's a whole other conversation. We could go into that if you want, but I completely
It's a
agree with
whole
you,
other
right?
conversation.
Yeah, that's
Dude, you know what's so crazy to me is that the fact that you and I are actually having this conversation, but somebody will hear this and be like, what the fuck are these two quacks talking about? But then
yeah,
somebody else will hear that and be like, wait, What they just say? I sit in this
So
every day. I go to the gym, and 3 or 4 times a week I go into the dry sauna, and I basically turned this into like an Aristotle Epictetus philosopher stone. And now, like before, people were just like sitting around there thumbing through their phones. When I walk in, they're like, all right, now the real conversations begin.
yeah, here we
And dude,
go.
we have like these meaningful conversations, and I've made these really cool friends in the sauna. But what's crazy, of the 6 to 8 people that are sort of engaged in the conversation, there's always like 2 or 3 people that are like, what the fuck are you guys talking about? Type of
Hmm.
stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm always fascinated by this. And I'm sorry, I'm going to get back to you on target for the podcast. I'm always fascinated that two people could have access to the exact same information, but have a
Hmm.
completely different polarized opinion and perspective of it, right?
Yeah.
It boggles my mind. And so I'm going back to you, because this whole idea of self-awareness and consciousness, one person can hear what you're saying and be like, I'm all in, and the other person would hear it and be like, what kind of woo-woo whack are you talking about?
Correct. So since the beginning of time, since the beginning of humanity, we have had sides. We've had Republican and Democrat. You have two people coming out of Harvard, both of them 170 IQ. One's Democrat, one's Republican, and they absolutely despise each other, right? So that was the main question I've always dug into, because that's why I went with my teacher. I wanted to understand where everything was coming from. I wanted to understand why a Catholic and an atheist, a Muslim and a Buddhist, all of the division and conflict on this planet. To your point of the sauna and the Socrates and everything you've turned that into, what's happening on this planet right now, to the people who don't understand this, perfectly fine. The people who think this is bullshit, what's happening is consciousness is raising on this planet. It's taking 8 billion people with it. And for those that don't understand it or think it's absolute bullshit, that's all shifting in the next couple of months. Humanity's never experienced anything that's going on right now in 2025. So your sauna, you're going to get more people that want to talk about what you're talking about. You're actually going to probably get the sauna is just going to get overloaded with people, because if you start talking about that shit, more and more people are going to be interested to it. Because what naturally happens when you're 11 and you want to stay 11, after 365 days, you turn 12. There's nothing you can do about it. That's what consciousness on this planet is shifting. It's shifting everyone up. So the reason we've done 60 of these, the reason why companies are coming at us, the reason why people are paying attention to this, the reason why we're training dozens of people to be a chief consciousness officer, even though it's only 3 months old, is because the whole planet's waking up to this word. It's the center of humanity. I don't give a shit if you think it's woo-woo or spiritual, anything like that. It's who you are. I don't care if you're religious or spiritual, agnostic, or Republican or Democrat, a man, a woman, black, white, red. It is everything in your realm, physical and non-physical. So when I say that, you can have your bias and your condition, you can push it away. You are going to need to understand what that means very soon, especially with AI speeding up the process of division like never before. You're going to
Mhm,
want to keep the humanity in.
mhm.
Consciousness is who you are. Your thoughts come from consciousness. Everything you've ever learned, Socrates, anything anyone's ever learned from you, anything you've ever read in a book, on a lecture, you've heard from your bishop, or whatever you want to know, anything you've learned or not, or yet to learn, is structured in consciousness. You start to understand consciousness more, you will have access to the knowledge that you seek, no matter what it is.
So in
That's
terms
a
of
very important point.
delivering this consciousness to businesses, which is what you're trying to do now, in terms of, I guess, a top-down model is something that you're focusing on. You affect the leaders; it kind of distills itself down naturally. Are you have you built is it a structured rubric that you're working from, or is this just you coming in and sitting down with executives and sort of explaining this like you are on a podcast to me, or is there a
No, no,
program?
this is all the employees. This is where we've missed the point. For the last 20 years, we've done those wellness programs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Look how the world looks.
Mm-hmm.
We've done meditation, we've done all that shit. The West is full of Catholics, atheists, Baptists, and a lot of people who are not Buddhist. As soon as those wellness programs come in and someone told them to meditate, they thought it was Buddhist and they were turned off by it.
Mm-hmm.
So this position is for all of the employees, every single one of them. This is not for the executives. It's not like a 1 month program and the other 11 months are just left and everyone leaves and no one talks to the employees. This is a position that's sitting inside the company day in and day out. It's going to be a position that's hired by thousands, if not tens of thousands of companies as this planet shifts, and it's shifting like never before. So what we have now is we're training CCOs. People are hiring CCOs, and we actually have a university program we're creating. It's going to be a 12-month long program for business schools. For they have chief AI officer programs, they have CEO programs, they have
Mm-hmm.
all of that stuff. So mark my words, this position will be absolutely crucial. Perfect example. 30 years ago when technology took over and everyone's like, oh, we need to get online. We know we need a website. We need to do all this. Anyone know how to code? No. Anyone know how to put up a website? Those weird guys, girls in the corner, we need to hire them. Who's the first people? Who's the first hire now? CTOs.
Hmm.
The CCO is going to be one of the first two hires these companies beginning very soon are going to hire because consciousness is everything. And they're
S-
going to understand that.
So you're already being hired in this fractional capacity.
Yes.
So you're going into businesses, big businesses, small businesses. What are you doing?
Startups, small, medium. I
And
haven't
you're
had any
going in
massive none.
and basically you're going in a fractional capacity,
Mhm.
and you're rewiring the culture of the people who work there based upon this consciousness model.
I'm working with an individual in his company that is trying to disrupt healthcare, like all $3 trillion of it, like just incredible. A
Wow.
guy who's building a bunch of AI products, a blanket company, and then um, oh my God, I can't even think about it. I can't even think of it.
How
I
do you
can't remember
sell
right
this
now.
to people?
Just like this, all
Just
these
a
podcasts.
conversation.
Well, think about it. What you're doing right now, is it working? No, man, burnout rates through the roof. How many coaches and consultants have you brought in? Every one of them. How's retention rate? Oh, it's terrible. Have you read all
Yeah.
the books? Yeah.
Yeah.
How's your employees for happiness? Hey, man, we got 10,000 books on happiness and everyone's so unhappy. So it's not about it's that. It's like, okay, so it's not working. Okay, so those are all leaves of a tree. The root of the issue is consciousness. I know that very well. I know how to bring it to your company. I know how to give it to you. I know how you trickle down to the employees. Burnout rate, retention rate, your wellness programs, all your executives are ready. All of that shit's happening. And yet you've never spent more money in all of that shit with coaches and consultants and books and everything. And it's not working. Let's try something new.
At the center of this, changing a culture, changing the consciousness model, it's really goes back to the individual themselves and sort of changing how they view the world and how they view themselves and how they operate, et cetera,
That
right?
is the best thing because you're taking everyone from here to here.
Hmm.
There's no authority. There's no
Hmm.
book to read. There's no we need to do this for 4 weeks and then the coach or the consultant leaves for the other 11 months. This position is there.
Mm. So you're working in a long-term sort of retainer with these organizations and shifting
Mm-hmm.
this.
Yes.
And sorry, back to my original question, which I may have interrupted. There's a rubric that you follow, or do you just meet the businesses and the organizations and the personnel where they are and then customize something for them?
Where they are because the structure, the one size fits all, the books, the 10-step programs, the 20-step programs that everyone thinks is incredible. There's a reason why authenticity is the highest frequency on this planet. That everything we've done structure wise has led us here. We need to be more malleable with what we're doing with an organization.
That's a great word, malleable. One of the reasons I had Marielle pursue you for the shows, I don't even know how we got in touch. I don't even remember, but I saw a lot of the things that you talk about, at least in that one sheet that you gave me, and then I went and listened to some other things that you had shown up in. And one of the things that really resonated with me is I look at my own. One of the reasons I got into coaching and branding in the first place, right? So that's sort of my zone of genius is helping people like yourself build a personal brand around you. And one of the things that makes me unique in that space is that I don't start with the business, I start with the individual. And we sort of reframe how you view yourself, how you view the world, and what are those gaps from where you are to where you want to be, right? So that's a form of consciousness that we're focusing on as well. And I call
Everything
it,
is, yeah.
yeah, so I call it just your self awareness and like dealing with your shadows and those things. And that all came from me going through my own journey and realizing that when I got divorced, when I got laid off, when my first business failed, when my second business failed, I was like, there's a pattern eliciting itself here. There's
Mm-hmm.
something that's not working. And there
Mm-hmm.
has to be something bigger than me just saying it was the market's fault, it was my wife's fault, it was the
Yep.
company's fault, right? And
Yep.
so, and it wasn't until, true story, it wasn't until I really sort of kind of went back to the origins of Devo and started realizing that I was personally responsible for almost in every situation the sabotage or the failure of what was going on. And I hadn't
Yes.
worked on me. I hadn't gone through this, and not that I'm anywhere
Correct.
near it, but as soon as I started working on it and hiring coaches, and I use the word coaches loosely, they were really mentors to really sort of
Yes.
hold me accountable and bitch slap me when I was fucking up. It wasn't until then that I really started making real changes in my life and my relationships and how I run my business. And so I love what you have to say, and that's why I'm so excited to learn more about this. So this rubric is sort of it's sort of like changing your internal locus of control kind of thing. Like you always have a choice in how you respond to situations and how you view the world, right?
So yes, so that's how we've approached it, right? That is the leaf of a tree. That is you can approach it, it's self-awareness, all this stuff. It's simply expanding the individual's awareness so they are now open to different answers, to different solutions, to different questions, to different perceptions. That's
Give
it.
me an example of how you do that.
It's conversation.
It's just
Remember the four?
conversation with people.
You remember the 4 minute mile?
Hmm.
It was impossible. No one could do it. Some son of a bitch ran it, and then thousands of people ran it the next year. This is when you talk about this stuff. This is so it seems simple, which is incredibly is simple, but this is stuff they can't unhear, unsee, or unlearn. All I would ask is that when the individual is listening to this or wondering about this, is just start to Google on your own what consciousness is. It's not spiritual. It's tactical. It's everything.
Do you have any good
It,
books that people could start off reading about it?
oh yeah, there's Penrose, Bernardo Kastrup, Donald Hoffman, all those guys are starting to talk about consciousness at a very, very high level.
I read this really cool book about 5 years ago by his name is Sadhguru. I don't know how
Mm-hmm.
you say his name. Inner
Sadhguru.
Engineering,
Yep.
Inner Engineering, and I
Mm-hmm.
loved his book, and I loved much of the stuff that he talks about. And then I found out that he was promoting the COVID vaccine and getting paid for it, and I lost all faith in him. No offense, different conversation. But that's the problem with these sort of mentors that people have is like it seems like some of them are just falsities, false prophets, and I think people lose hope with that. So in terms of
100%.
this, in terms of this delivery, this application, this cultural shift that you're trying to bring, what makes you sort of the paragon of why we should follow this blueprint?
Because for the last 20 years, all we've done is spiritual escapism, spiritual distraction, and there's been
Hmm.
more teachers and fucking gurus than ever
Hmm.
possible.
Hmm.
And to your point, once you really dig into who they are, they're human and they're going to let you down because you put them on such a pedestal. Everything that shifted in 2025, every timeline that's come to an end, every planet that shifted, this is the time of sovereignty. This is the time of people waking up to their own answers. All this individual is doing, all this position does is wake them up to their own answers. There's no book to read. There's no rubrics, as you put it. There's no structure. You don't need to be this religion. You don't need to be this politician. You don't need to put anything. It's truly, like as you put it, you love that word. It's malleable.
Well, but you
There's there's
still
there's no nonprofit, there's no movement. You don't need to follow this, nothing. It's just taking someone from here to here. You're just letting them know what they have access to.
So when I say rubric, I don't necessarily mean like you're subscribing to an online laboratory. I guess where I'm getting at is have you created a system, if you will, where you're meeting people where they are, but in this system, you're walking them through how they can become more critically minded, more self-aware, more conscious at the end of the day? Is it, or is it
Yeah,
so there is sort of a program in other words.
they're just questions.
Hmm.
Truly, it's just this. It's wide open.
And then just
It's
having deep,
truly wide
meaningful
open.
conversations with them.
That's it. That's it.
And
Let's put it. Let me give you a great example, just really quickly. The guy I'm working with the AI lab, and he's doing a bunch of AI products. He saw what chat. He did that. He saw that study that MIT just did. What
I
the
saw
brain
that.
is on ChatGPT, right? So that's and then you come. Then they come out, and it's really not as bad as we thought. Either way,
I saw that too.
he was worried about that, and he gave me both sides of the coin. Is this going to be a good thing that I'm building, or am I going to ruin the world like social media has? We
Hmm.
just had a discussion and I didn't point him. I wasn't for AI and I'm not against it. That's the big key word here that we haven't brought up: neutrality. Everyone you're going to talk to is either for or against what you're discussing. I'm not for AI. I'm not against AI. So if you're for AI, you're going to have all the articles that are for AI and they're going to back up your opinion. If you're against it, you're going to find all the articles that are going to steal your jobs and the robots are going to come and kill everyone and humans are going to go extinct, right? It's Republican or Democrat. It's both sides.
Hmm.
So all we did is we had a discussion on what this means from both sides, gave him the full perception. After that discussion, after about an hour, he fully understood what he needed to do move forward, just based off of him, his individual, what he wanted to do with the world. And he was fully aware of the pros and the cons. That's all we need to do.
A lot of the things that you're saying to me sound a bit existential, esoteric, and I think a lot of people have gotten away from that and have forgotten that that's really who we are as humans. We're just energy sources, like living in an energetic vibrational body, right? And so, like the whole,
So tell me what's esoteric about just letting people see both sides of the conversation.
oh no, not what you're saying. I don't disagree with that. And I don't disagree. By the way, I'm on.
No, I know you don't, but I want this conversation to be heard by your listeners.
I think that a lot of people, just like AI, for example, have formed their own opinion about something and
Oh yeah,
don't take the time to do the real research themselves, and
yes,
then they just jump on the bandwagon of saying, "Hey, I read this." I mean, that's basically your 5 o'clock news every day, right? We're
yes,
at
exactly.
war. We're at war where Iran's at. Where no one's at war. First of all, it's all just a big fucking theatrical performance, right? That's what I personally believe. Because if you really dive in and start looking at the facts, there really isn't anything actually going on. Like, do you honestly think? Sorry, I'm getting off target. To answer your question, I think that a lot of people, when they hear these words like the planets are shifting, there's never before been
Oh, sure. Oh, sure. Okay.
it's
I
a
got you.
bit existential. Like, what does that even mean?
Understood.
Right. And it's sort of like global warming, for example. And if you actually look at the data of global warming, you see the planet isn't actually warming. In fact, in some areas, the planet's actually cooling. But if you also go even deeper into that data, you'll see that the planet has done this like 16 times since we know,
Hmm.
because you can read the polar ice cap data that they when they core into the earth and they pull out all the data, they can show that the planet has heated and frozen and completely obliterated itself on a cyclical
Hmm.
shift every 25,000 years or so. And we're kind
Hmm.
of coming to the end of that 25,000 years. And so this shifting
Yes,
is
we are.
beginning, right? Poles shift. We know they've shifted at least multiple times in past scenarios. So
Hmm.
so when people hear these things, they do kind of pick a camp. I'm either here or I'm
Sure.
there, right?
Sure.
And
Yes.
nobody wants to go neutral, because neutral kind of means A, you don't have the answers to it, or you're maybe just sort of like in limbo. I don't really know. So everybody sort of
Hmm.
picks a camp, because when they pick a camp, they get a group of other people to support them in their camp, right? Like that's
Correct.
polarity at its core, right?
Yep.
So when I guess my question was, is when people hear these concepts that you're talking about, do you get pushback on the idea that this is just a little bit too far out there from me?
Not really,
No,
because do I look spiritual? Does my aggression, my
I don't know what that
swearing, my
looks like.
passion behind it exactly?
I have no
Do,
idea
do
what
I
that
have
looks like.
loose fitting white clothing with a mala bead and a meditation tattoo on my forearm? No. Am I speaking about all love? It's meditation. It's all one. And I'm doing this very soft. No, no, because the ability to deliver it, the narrative, when people do ask these questions and I give them a very thorough answer that doesn't go against it or for it, like this whole package, this whole way of discussing that is when you talk about your creative genius, what you just said about 10 minutes ago, my mind is packed full of an infinite amount of answers and metaphors to anyone at any level when it comes to consciousness, when it comes to business, when it comes to anything that pops up in this situation. This position, that's what we're training for. Me specifically, if a company truly understood what would happen, I wouldn't have enough time in the day.
Mm.
There's it's tens of millions of dollars. It's priceless
So how did
what
you
this
come
is
into
happening.
this?
I had businesses in the past. I tried to save the world through a nonprofit with Pay It Forward
I
Foundation,
saw
the
that.
famous book in the movie. And then I spent 10 years with my teacher, and he stripped me of all my bias and conditioning. He had me read every book, not to feed my head full of bullshit and knowledge, but to make me understand that everything everyone's fighting over is coming from the same source. So how do you choose a side? And what's the one thing we've never done since the beginning of humanity? To your point, when you said if you're neutral and you don't pick a side, then you don't have a group with you. It's the only thing we haven't done in humanity. And look at humanity; it's more fucked up than
Hmm.
ever.
Hmm.
We're more divided and conflicted than ever. So let's keep doing the same shit. Are we that ignorant?
Yeah.
Apparently so.
Well, we
We
do.
need new exactly. We need neutrality. So I'm going to first one through the wall is always a little bloody, right? The
Mm.
Moneyball quote.
Mm.
So that's fine. I'm going to bring neutrality to these organizations. And one by one, when they start to see what happens when you have someone on staff like this, to see the power in it, then thousands of companies, tens of thousands of companies, it's going to be a staple in the C suite. So my teacher, my company, all of that world, rather than just going off in one identity and thinking that's the way, it's all different. I just combined them. I didn't go off to the Himalayas and start meditating because of my teacher. He's a very powerful individual. There was something in me that my ego didn't leave, my passion didn't leave. There was something in the world that brought me back to have a conversation like this with you. And I could talk to anyone at any level of any intelligence at any time about this topic in a way that makes them understand it, but more importantly, removes the fear.
Mm.
That's what we need with the unknown. And the unknown's coming very quickly right now with this shift. Just remove a little bit of the fear. They're more open to it. And they're like, holy shit, I have access to this? Yes, you do.
That's funny when you remove the fear, because people get addicted to fear. You're muted.
That's all they know.
Yeah,
It's literally all they know.
people are addicted to fear.
Yes, they are.
You mentioned you spent 10 years learning this from your master. Was this a 10-year sabbatical, or were you still running your life concurrently?
Still life. No, that's the thing. I didn't jump off like most people do. I
So
just
you were
was,
sort of like doing your thing, but at the same time
mhm.
learning on the backside.
Yeah, had businesses, had the nonprofit, life, kids, all that stuff. Yep.
How did pre-Charlie sabbatical and post-sabbatical Charlie, how did those two versions of you evolve?
They didn't.
What were some of the
This
biggest
is
changes you
exact.
saw?
Nothing. One of the greatest teachers on the planet said this. He said, after 20 years with his teacher, 20 years of psychedelics, 20 years of meditation, 20 years of the highest level knowledge, not a single one of his neuroses went away. Not a single one.
But
This is exact.
some of your shadows and your ego, I'm assuming, was adjusted.
No, I became aware of it. That's
Mm.
it.
I
It's not
mean,
going away. It's who you are as a human, it's not going away. The people who are one way and then they have a spiritual awakening and they change, that's just mood making. For most of them, they may have a dramatic change and they may be more calm. That's perfectly fine. But for most, that's mood making because they don't want to deal with certain things. There's not a lot that shifts on an individual because the spiritual path was created to exhaust the seeker. Nothing more.
Hmm.
Absolutely nothing more.
I don't have any experience with this, and I'm being honest. But someone to take several ayahuasca trips versus going through a program with you like this. What's the difference between the two?
One of them's permanent. One of them is altered.
Ayahuasca is just altering you.
Yeah.
I have no experience. I just know the people.
Well, no,
I
now,
came back from Sedona recently, and uh, I was talking at the outset of the call, like the two camps of people. And I was
mhm.
literally driving in a car through Sedona, and there was a group of woke yogis arguing over their spirit animals and how many ayahuasca trips they had done and how it had shifted their life. And I'm just thinking, and I don't know that ayahuasca is or isn't. I don't know much about it other than I do know that it alters your sort of perception of things.
Perception. Uh-huh.
I would imagine that it's not something you would be bragging about to tell how many you've done.
For them, it is. So it's no different than if you were in a car full of entrepreneurs that had started a bunch of businesses. They'd be bragging about that, about how many companies they started and being a serial entrepreneur. It'd be about if you had a car full of athletes, they talk about what they did in college and what they did in their high
That's
school
a good
days. Now they
point.
scored 4 touchdowns. Everything we're talking about is the same. The biggest issue with humans is we separate everything out as good and bad, right or wrong.
Mm,
This is better. It's all the same. All of this experience is coming from the same. So if you get caught up in an identity of being a yogi and doing 100 ayahuasca trips and thinking that's the way and everyone should do it, you're the problem. If you
mm,
think you're an athlete and that if you're a coach, if you're this, if you're a consultant, if you're a meditation teacher, if you're it doesn't matter.
mm,
If you think what you know is the way, that's the issue that creates all the division and the conflict. Consciousness is everything. That's
mm.
the different with this position. There's no direction. It's 8 billion people. All of them are walking around and are consciousness. This is
Uh,
an individual in a position that's not telling any one of them to go any other way than the way they want to with a little bit more clarity.
This
That's
whole
it.
this whole idea of there's no right, there's no wrong, and what you just said sounds a bit along the lines of moral relativity. What's the difference between what you're preaching or guiding people through and this whole idea of moral relativity?
How would you define moral relativity?
Well, I don't believe that there is such a thing as right or wrong. I do think that there is light and dark and bad outcomes and positive outcomes depending upon who you are.
Mm-hmm.
But if you, it's sort of like I was having this conversation in Home Depot the other day, and I was buying a new lawnmower and weed eater or whatever it was, and I was like, "Why are they all behind bars locked up?" And he's like, "Because never in the history of Home Depot have we had more theft." And I was like, "How the fuck is somebody walking out with a lawnmower?" And he goes, "Well, we
It's
can't
not a
stop."
candy bar.
Yeah, he's like, "We can't stop them. We cannot interfere." I was like, "What do you mean you can't interfere? If someone's walking out of the store with a lawnmower, we cannot stop them, and there's nothing we can do about it." And so we kept talking, and apparently there's some law where you cannot, and I know California started this, where you can't actually incriminate somebody for theft if they're going in. You can't stop them. He's like, we technically cannot stop them. So never before in the history of Home Depot have we had this problem because we can't physically engage with them. We just have to let them walk out the store. And I was like, well, why? Where did this come from? And he's like, because they can't get busted. They can just continue to do whatever they want. And so the first thing I thought about is this whole idea of like this woke movement and this whole idea of like everybody gets a trophy and everybody gets an award and everyone's equal and everyone's doing all those things and this whole idea of like entitlement and all the stuff that is like happening right now and on the on and like everywhere I go, it's like I should get this, or I should not have to work for this, or I should. And in my coaching business, I see people and they get frustrated after like 2 weeks of running a new business. And I'm like, dude, it took me 14 years to build my business. You've been this
Mm-hmm.
for 2 weeks. And so,
Mm-hmm.
anyway, this whole idea of moral relativity sort of centers around this idea of like, well, there's no right or wrong. It's Kimuse, Kimusaw. I can just go do whatever the fuck I want type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just sort of thinking like, what's the difference between the two?
So I'm thinking more in the line of just giving people the awareness of what's moral to a Catholic is not moral to an atheist. What's moral to a
Mm,
Republican is not moral to a Democrat.
what's
Just
that?
simply asking them what's better, heads or tails of the coin.
What's
Any
that?
logical human's going to be like, oh, they're the same. No shit. The question is not what's better, not what side should I choose, but where did they both come from? Where'd the coin come from?
Mm,
Just that question right there without an answer for your listeners That's part of this conversation. Where did the coin come from? Because everyone's choosing heads or tails, and that's what we did. That's what we've done since the beginning of humanity. And the heads people, the Republicans, Catholics, whatever you want to call them, will sit down on in a conversation like this and say, I really care about the planet. I care about my kids. I want to leave it better for the next generation. I completely agree with you. I know your trust. I trust you. I know you do. I know you're not lying to me. And then the tails of the coin, the Democrats and the atheists would say, I love my kids. I want to leave it better for this next generation. And I would say, I trust you. I know you're not lying to me. Why has the world never been more divided and conflicted than ever?
Hmm.
Because both sides are completely ignorant to the shit they're pulling and creating the same division and conflict that the other side is doing. And you think the other side's ruining the world. They think you're ruining the world. Since the beginning of time, we've done this, and look where we stand.
Hmm.
We need someone to come in neutrally to bring awareness to both sides within a business, within religion, especially within politics, so we can truly be bipartisan. Because every time I ask someone, do you know anyone who's neutral? Do
Hmm.
you know anyone who's neutral?
No, everybody has an opinion.
There you go.
If I'm a CEO and I'm listening to this call, and I don't know if I fall in the conscious side or the unconscious side, I hope I'm on the conscious side because I'm always asking questions. That's why I have this podcast. I want to learn and expand. But if I don't know where I am, and maybe I am an unconscious leader, how, how would I how would I hear this podcast and be reflective enough to say, you know what? I never actually thought about that before. Let me see if I can get in touch with Charley. What does unconscious leadership look like?
Unconscious leadership are probably not listening to this show. And if they do listen to this show, they think I'm a fucking idiot.
Mm.
So that's a good sign. For the people in the middle that are listening to this and saying, I don't understand, I probably don't follow, I don't know if I really want to do this, but let me take a look at my business. That's a good start. And then there's going to be some that look at that and say, my God, my retention rate burnout's through the roof. I'm not that happy myself. My wife's not happy. There's a lot of tension within the business, a lot of tension out in the world. Everything we've done, we did that coaching, we did that, we did this. It's not really working. There's something's off. Those individuals, those are the ones that are going to reach out and talk to me, and we'll just have a discussion of what this position will do.
So hypothetical, my company has been predominantly very successful in years past, but for whatever reason, the last few years, I've been seeing a decline, and I'm speaking hypothetical. I've been
Yep.
seeing a decline in my revenue, and I'm not really sure what's going on. What sort of questions would you be asking me as an unconscious or conscious leader to have a better understanding of how my business and why it may be dropping in revenue?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't be talking about the leaves of the tree, so I wouldn't be asking questions like that because they already know what that is. The root of its consciousness, the shift on this planet. This is where we'd have this discussion. This is why it would be different than different coaches and consultants. The shift on this planet, specifically the last couple of years, is bringing up everything everyone in your company has ever suppressed, including you, for the last 30 or 40 years. Are you thinking differently? Yeah, I'm kind of a little bit more stressed out. Are you having random thoughts you haven't thought about in decades? Oh, shit, that's right. And you start talking to the employees. Is that happening? Yes. That's what's happening. The mental health crisis. Why do you think we got a mental health crisis? We were really good at lying ourselves for 40 years. We were really good at just, oh, to each their own, doesn't matter, let's not argue. We suppressed that for 30 or 40 years. When consciousness on this planet raises, look at the world. Look how much chaos there is. That's a leaf of a tree. What's going on in the Middle East? What's going on with the economy? What's going on with the politics? What's going on with the world? All of that shit's been suppressed the last 30, 40 years. So this is a completely different conversation that I'm going to have that any other coach or consultant or anyone that you bring into the business is going to have. Whether they understand it or not, at least it's different and we can bring attention to there's something off this last year. Yes, for 8 billion people. I could talk to every one of the employees in your company. Are you thinking different? Yes. Is there a little bit more stress at home? Uh-huh. Have you thought of weird shit you haven't thought about in a couple of decades? Uh-huh. Or is shit coming up that you're starting to remember shit as a kid, starting to remember stuff that you didn't want to think about for the last, uh-huh. Did you used to have confidence for the last decade and now it's kind of being shattered? Are you having like a existential crisis and you think it's your job, it's your purpose, it's your wife, it's your kids, everything? They're all leaves of a tree. Why is that happening in the last couple of years? Why is the world more chaotic and divided in the last year, in the last 6 months, when we've never had more access to philosophy and coaches and consultants and books on happiness and books on retention rate and books on burnout? We have more information than ever. We've never been worse. Someone has to have the conversation at the level of consciousness, not the leaf of the tree.
But
Mhm.
why? What's happening? The planets are shifting, the poles are shifting. Like what's actually happening that's causing some of this? Because there's certainly a lot
Okay,
of
so
I do know that there's like this interplanetary model that exists, and these things are happening and shifting, and the planet's on a cycle, and every 25,000 years or so. I understand all those things. I understand
mhm,
that there's a history and there's data for that to
mhm,
support that. But in our current time, when I look at what's going on, I have two teenage daughters.
okay,
I'm a businessman. I've been an entrepreneur for almost 15 years now. Chronic overstimulation, disconnection from community, suppressed emotions. We have no place to talk to. We don't have friends. We
mhm,
don't have people.
mhm,
We're
mhm,
taking narcotics. We're taking
mhm,
pharmaceuticals. We're literally
mhm,
like
mhm.
numbing ourselves out. We're no
Yep.
longer just sitting in nature barefoot and staring at the trees or touching the leaves. Or like, there's so many different things that I could say that are happening. Social media's
Uh-huh.
come in now.
Okay.
You've got this bullshit woke movement. You've got all fucking
Yep.
trauma all the place. Like,
Yep.
there's just
Yep.
like constant 24/7.
Uh-huh.
Like we're
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
literally
Yeah.
being like hit.
Yep.
So
Yep.
there's all that going on. But is all of
Uh-huh.
that going on, it's chicken or the egg? Is all of that that's going on because of the shifts that are happening right now, or are they sort of
Yes.
like,
Both.
hmm,
So the natural cycle of everything we're going through is because the shift of consciousness pushes everyone up, like the natural shift of an 11-year-old turning 12.
hmm.
So this shift pushes everything up. It brings clarity to people. Clarity doesn't mean that all you're going to start seeing is good things. It's going to show you all the shit you haven't wanted to deal with, all the stuff you've ever suppressed, all the stuff you don't want to think about, all the stuff that's always been there, but you've lied to yourself about. You can't lie to yourself anymore. That bullshit meter we talked about 30 minutes ago with employees being able to see through the executives and their bosses, that's part of the clarity where you would look at them and say, yeah, they just gave me a Starbucks gift card and they told me they were happy with me and that they really appreciate my work. Maybe they're telling the truth. Now, oh man, that's bullshit. I know they're lying to me. They're just trying to manipulate me, get more productivity out of me. Everything that's happening on this planet is that natural turning an 11-year-old into 12.
Hmm.
So I think you lost me there, but it's kind of like you're 15 and you're the star quarterback and you got the cheerleader girlfriend. Over the summer between sophomore and junior year, you break your leg. No more star quarterback, no more cheerleader girlfriend. The world doesn't come to an end because you heal your leg, you get back on it, and the senior year, they start quarterback again. Like this is part of the process. This is just simple. We will come out of this better. We will come, but this is pure chaos because humanity's never had a shift in consciousness like this ever. And people, whether they think that's esoteric or existential, all they got to do is look at their business. They got to look at the world. It's more conflicted and divided than ever. There's more chaos. There's more shit. And to your point, when you're talking about you got the teenage daughters, you got social media, and you got this and this and this. That's why it's all much. We're completely overwhelmed because of the shift of consciousness on this planet. We can't push it out. We can't lie to ourselves. There's clarity now. We do see what's on the other side of the windshield of the car.
How does hiring you for a program like this going to shift that for a company internally?
You need awareness. Everyone's walking around in the dark. What do we do? Why do we do this? Let's get the same coach. Let's get the same consultant. Let's go get another book on happiness. Let's go force the employees into the wellness program they don't want to meditate in.
Mm.
You're going to do the same shit. Really? Because the same level of consciousness is what created all the chaos in the world right now. That same level can't solve it. Einstein quote, the same mind that creates a problem can't solve it. You've got to have someone in the organization who has a higher level of consciousness, a higher level of clarity, who's neutral and can see both sides and can say, this is why everyone in the world's losing their mind. This is why your employees are more tense. This is why you're more intense, Mr. CEO. This is why HR is having a tough time hiring. This is why the wellness program isn't working. Could you imagine having legit, clear answers to all of those questions as a company when you're going through the toughest time? Because to your point, everything's been successful, everything's been fine. But there's a significant amount of people in the last year or two that have seen a dramatic shift and they don't know why. So, what they're doing is the same shit they did before the dramatic shift happened.
Mm.
And look at the results. Look at it. It's pure chaos out there.
When you first meet CEOs, when you're talking about this, are there specific resistance that you receive from them?
No, by the time they're talking to me, they're open to it. And again, I have a business background, like 250 employee, 260 employee company.
Mm.
I have pay it forward. I've got a great, I'm not, again, to my point earlier, you don't know what that looks like, but like a tree hugging hippie that's like, Mr. CEO, we're just going to meditate it away and it's all one. No, I've got this aggression. I've got this passion about me. I know business. I know how to speak their lingo, but I also know how to bridge the gap and bridge what they actually need to be doing. It's totally different.
So you're using this model on your own current companies and your own current employees?
Shit, yeah.
Can you sort of explain what that looks like on a day-to-day basis?
Every question they have, they're
Yeah,
going
but
to get
certainly
both
if
sides of it.
people are doing things. They're out building their widgets and they're on the factory floor and they're in cubicles and they're on telephones and calls. You're not just walking around with a megaphone saying, "Hey, let's have a discussion." What does that look like? Or maybe you are. I want to be in this factory. I just want to see this shit.
Oh my God. No, it's just being there. You're still it's going to be business as usual. You're still going to have strategy. You're still going to have structure. None of the positions in the company are going to be threatened. HR is not going to be threatened. The chief people officer are not going to be threatened. Customer service is not going away. Middleman. This is just business with clarity. That's all it is. So there's conversations at the watering hole. Someone has problems at home. You're just more aware. Everyone's got their expanded awareness. They're more aware of their employees. They're more aware of their coworkers. Oh, looks like Susie's having a tough day, or the difference between Susie and Ed, that they're always at each other's throats because one's a Republican and one's a Democrat. That starts to minimize. The division and conflict starts to minimize.
It almost sounds like you're giving people permission to be, and in the process, enabling them to ask questions and support and whatnot. Because I think a lot of
Yeah.
times when I worked in the corporate world, one of the things that I always hated is that people didn't have permission. I'm not joking. True story. I had been on the job for about 3 or 4 weeks, and I wasn't a chump. I was already a middle level manager in the company, and I had a boss call me in and tell reprimand me for being innovative and efficient and getting in a project under budget and questioning another person who was basically just sloughing off and doing nothing. And I was told that I was out of line and that that's not how it works here, that you need to sort of
Mhm.
follow a protocol. And I was like, did I just
There you
save you
go.
like $1.5 million?
There you
Like,
go.
so people don't have permission to do things like that is one of the things I observed.
Yeah. That's part of the process.
So in the process of your consciousness training, you would have had a conversation with this. So let me back up. I experienced this from my boss, but there's a consciousness officer that's an open door policy, and I walk in and tell you this exact story. So then what would you have done with that?
With you and your boss?
My boss just reprimanded me for being innovative and saving the company $1.5 million because I didn't follow protocol and I was being more efficient than I should. And I'm like,
Oh,
why would I get in trouble for this? I'm going to go talk to Charlie, the consciousness officer, and tell him what happens.
I'd pull you off the cliff and just say, don't worry about it. And then maybe the next day or two, I just go talk to the boss.
So that's how this
Because again,
consciousness model works.
that's it. Because when they understand that someone is neutral and that when I go in and talk to them, that I'm not for them, I'm not against them. I'm not trying to kiss anyone's ass. I'm not on either side of the employer, or the executive. I'm just going to say, listen, this is what happened. He saved you $1 million. Tell me why that's a problem. And just break it down. Just like I would say, what's better, heads or tails of the coin? And to your esoteric point, there's an energy there. So when you say, is there pushback, or you're going to have problems with this, that's not going to work. It does work for me. And it will work for CCOs that are trained like that. When you walk in and you're neutral, people tell me shit you can't even imagine. It doesn't matter. There's no more side. When I walk into the office, that executive is not going to throw his walls up and say, "Well, this is the way. This is the fucking." No, they won't. It
How
just
do
doesn't
you
happen that way.
how do you have immunity or impunity so that you're not in trouble with that? How do you maintain neutrality? Like if there's a CEO that's against you or someone in the office that doesn't believe in your role,
Mhm.
how are you empowered in this process so that you do have sort of neutrality protection and you get to be the you in regardless?
Because if they're fighting me, I'm not fighting them.
Mm.
And what human beings are usually, they're checking to see, are you for me or against me? And if you're for me, I'm going to lean into you. If you're against me, I'm going to push up against you.
Got it.
Well, either way, oh shit. Oh boy. There's no fighting.
Hmm. So are you
Most
training
most
other
arguments happen. Most arguments that are happening are because both sides are engaging. If one side doesn't engage, there's not a lot that happens.
you're like when I got divorced, I chose the route of
A
arbitration.
mediator.
Mediator, yeah. My wife wanted to go full on divorce attorneys, and I was like, no, this is a waste of time. Let's just find somebody who can remain neutral. So that's sort of how you show up. How I'm at
Sure.
least interpreting. In terms of
Sure.
this idea of tactical, you said it a couple of times in this conversation. I read about it on several pieces of information. What changes when consciousness leads? Meeting, culture, performance, like specifically, like what does that look like tactically?
You're going to get a vague answer, but it's going to be everything changes because every position in the company goes from here to here.
Hmm.
They have access to more information, to more solutions, to do things better. Marketing's better, sales better, operations better, customer service better, CEOs better, HR hiring better, CFOs looking at money better. You're expanding everyone's awareness. So tell me what's not going to impact. Tell me what's not going to be better when people have a different awareness of that
Hmm.
or an expanded awareness, have better solutions and know how to fix things quicker and better.
When you talk tactical, a lot of CEOs are going to say, "Show me my ROI, show me my KPIs." Do you have data around this?
That question, I mean, we could come up with it, but what they would see within the first week or two is they would just see less division and conflict. They would see, it would just change everything.
Hmm.
And I think it's getting to the point now with all the businesses that everything they're trying, the KPIs, the ROIs, that every person they bring in, every book they read, every structure, every type of new expert they bring in, it doesn't seem to be working. So there's more than enough now that are saying everything's not working. I don't know what the CCO is, but it's worth a shot.
That's an interesting situation to sort of analyze because
Hmm.
people do want data.
Hmm.
People sort of like the whole faith-based construct of my
So
dad used to tell
so
me,
and
my dad used to tell me, there's no questioning. It's just God. You just have to have faith, believe in it. And I was like, well, show me the proof. I want to see it. Like, show me what he could do right now. But that really is, if you go back to like the origins of manifestation and abundance and all sort of like, you have to believe that it's actually real before it happens. But a lot of people have a difficult time doing that.
so to the data and ROI. All these individuals, all these companies have always wanted that data on that ROI on those KPIs. Look at how we're doing.
Hmm.
I'm not asking you to have faith. I'm not asking you to believe in something that's not real. I'm a human being. I have a business background. I know what I'm talking about. Deep at your soul level, you know what I'm talking about. I know you want ROI. I know you want data. I know you want KPIs. That's everything you've done since the beginning. Everything seems to be falling apart. So how's that data, the KPI, and that ROI working out for
How do you remain neutral? You're human. You have biases. You have tendencies.
you?
You have learned behaviors and contexts that have driven how you show up in the world. So how do you remain neutral?
For 10 years with my teacher,
Mm.
I just don't vote. I don't pick sides. I truly don't. That's just a natural tendency for me.
That's something you would have to unlearn, I would imagine.
Yeah, part of those 10 years was unlearning.
Hmm.
Luckily for me, though, the way I was raised by my parents, I didn't have any religious background or spiritual background. We weren't political or anything. I was just a sponge. I was as neutral as this wall behind me from day one. And there
Interesting.
are people out there like that. They're crossing our paths.
Is there a simple daily practice that we can do as leaders of our own companies that if we're listening to this show, we can start doing today to become more conscious in our own rights?
Yeah. Ask yourself, what's better, the heads or tails of the coin? So it's not meditation, it's not mindfulness, it's not 5 minutes of breathing because we've done that. It's working. It's really great stuff, but it's just something different. When you get into an argument or you're not seeing both sides of the coin, or you have a very intelligent executive that's not agreeing with you, just simply ask yourself, what's better, heads or tails of the coin? That shifts the mindset. It's like, oh, shit, maybe they might be right. Maybe I'm right. It doesn't matter. Let me see if I can find some middle ground here,
Mhm.
or just hire a CCO and they'll give it for you.
So are you training the next wave of CCOs? So
Yeah,
people
working with a bunch right now.
so people would come to you for a program that you're teaching them the 10 years that you spent with this master, you're fast tracking that for them.
Mhm.
What's that program look like?
Very malleable.
Is it like a mentor mentee-ship program?
No, just a bunch of conversations. There's people within businesses that want to advance their career, and then there's people outside of corporate that don't want to go back into corporate unless it means something to them. And as all the exposure we're getting through people like you, thanks to guys like you, these companies are really going to start hiring this. It's going to be a staple in the C-suite, and it's a C-suite position, so it's going to be six figures or more.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a lot of people who are attracted to this position, and we will know very quickly if they can do it or not. Because anyone who's super spiritual and does 100 ayahuasca trips, they're not going to be a CCO. It's not going to work.
What do you look for when you're looking for someone like this to be to be a mentee in
they
this space?
they need to have a business background. They need to be able to speak the lingo of the business. They need to be able to bridge the worlds between the two of the expanding consciousness. They need to understand consciousness very clearly and very highly. They can have a spiritual background that's perfectly fine, but they still have to have. They need to be grounded. They need to be, in a sense, past the spirituality. If they're still ingrained in all of that shit, they're going to approach it from that angle, and they're going to think they're going to be able to push that on the business, the CEO, and everyone in it. They're going to turn a lot of people off because 90% of the world doesn't give two shits about spirituality.
Yeah.
This individual needs to be a very rare individual, and then we got to work on neutrality.
For the last few minutes, just in a few words, what's one business norm that when this sort of consciousness is instilled, we all unlearn?
We unlearn, at least we take the edge off believing that we are the ones who know what's going on and the other side is ruining the world.
Hmm.
We start to become aware of like, shit, we may be a part of the problem just as much as the other side is.
Hmm.
And that awareness, that's when things really start to shift.
Hmm.
because it's true.
What would you say is the most difficult part about staying conscious in leadership?
Staying conscious, not getting caught up in your side, not listening to a very intelligent executive of yours because you know after 2 years of working with them that they're Republican and you're Democrat, and walling off 50% of the solutions and being completely walled off against that individual just because of what they believe in. You are hurting yourself, you're hurting your team, you're hurting the company, you're hurting your future.
Mhm. So at the core of this consciousness concept, it's just self-awareness and neutrality.
There you go.
If tomorrow was your last day on the planet and your mothership's hovering above your home tonight, and this is your last day building this movement that you're trying to do. And this is a movement in my terms. What would you want to be remembered for?
I don't care. I know that's not a good answer, but I really don't care. I really don't. I don't know what I'd want to be remembered for, because if we look at how we remember history and how how much it's just his story and bullshit and made up stuff, and it'll be ruined anyways. And you play that game telephone, and by the time it gets around to the 10th person, what you said at the first has nothing to do with it. I don't care about being remembered for any of that stuff. I'm talking to you and I right now, and as long as I'm on this planet, I want to get people. I want to get companies hiring CCOs.
That's funny that you said that. I said to someone in one of these sauna conversations, I said, you do realize we're actually talking about history. I was like, you do know that history is just made up by the victors. It's rewritten by whoever
Hmm.
conquered, and it's going to
Yeah,
be rewritten again and again and again. And
continuously. Yep. Yep.
whoever is the conquering, residing power at the time is going to make up the story that you're told, that our children are told, that their children are told, until somebody else comes in and changes that. And he just
Yep.
looked at me and he's like, "So you're saying that all of history is fake?" And I'm like, "Yeah, for the most part, it is actually. Yeah,
50%. Yeah.
or at least contextually, it's been
Yeah.
reshaped so that you can understand it from their point of view."
Correct.
He said I was full of bullshit, and I was like, "Okay, all right." If people want to connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
LinkedIn, please. That's where the conversation is happening directly. People get to see what the position is, what it's not. And that's just the most professional businesses, executives, employees. So LinkedIn, and I'm sure you already have that link.
If
Thank you.
I hired you to come into my business today, and it's a small business, I've got 4 people. What's the first thing you would do?
Just start talking to all four of you. I need to know who you are. I don't need to. I don't really care much about the business. I want to know who that individual is at their core. I want to understand their biases and their conditionings. I want to understand their fears, their insecurities, what they think about the world, all of that stuff. I just want to have conversations. I want to observe.
Charley, I've enjoyed this conversation, man. I appreciate you coming on, and I think we should stay
Thank you.
connected. I think there's a lot of things that I'm doing and you're doing that might have some crossover.
Well, I think with that, that's the other thing we're working on is individuals like you who already have customers and have that reach. I'd love to start working more with you guys, because then I could just bring an added tool to your tool belt that's only going to help your business grow and help your clients.
Hmm.
I don't need to be separate. I don't need to be the top dog. Fuck that.
Hmm.
I'll do
Yeah.
whatever.
Let's stay connected. Thanks for tuning in to the Branding Laboratory. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Connect with us on social media for more branding tips and insights. And remember, your story matters. Until next time, keep building and sharing your unique brand story. I'll see you soon. Thanks for tuning in to the Branding Laboratory. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Connect with us on social media for more branding tips and insights. And remember, your story matters. Until next time, keep building and sharing your unique brand story. I'll see you soon.